and all his works?
I do renounce them.
Godfather's climactic sequences are one of the most recognizable and well-respected pieces of cinema. At their best, they are the pure celebration of cinema as a storytelling medium. But how should they be evaluated at their worst? Were the climactic sequences in the sequels Coppola's failed attempts at recreating the magic of the original's climax, or were they successful in their own rights? How each of them complete their own respective movies? Fellow film enthusiasts, we are going to put three Godfather movies' climactic sequences under the lens today. We are going to discuss the genius of the Godfather's crosscuts. The Godfather. Of course, we are going to get started with the first movie's climactic crosscut sequence. Who would not? The only scene which clearly eclipses its counterpart from the book is the climax, where cinematic elements really come to the forefront and shine. But how does the movie get there in the first place? And why its resolution feels so majestic? The main storyline of the original Godfather is a succession in the Corleone family, and throughout the movie, Vito's son Mike Corleone is built up as his would-be successor. Mike manages a lot of things well, but at the moment of Vito's death, nobody expects him to be ready for replacing his father, neither the enemies nor allies. We as an audience are also semi-kept in the dark. We know that Michael anticipates the hit, but we do not know what kind of counter move he has prepared. Mike is largely framed as an underdog in the War of Five Families. That's why movie's final crosscut sequence is so uplifting. At the start of the scene, Michael is Don Corleone only in name, but he is considered just as a mild obstacle by his peers. Towards the end of the climactic sequence, Mike becomes a true Don, a true Godfather, and all his enemies are dead. As we mentioned, the framing of the scene is largely unique to the movie. There are many things happening simultaneously. Mike baptizes Connie's son, becomes his godfather in the process, and his henchmen execute all of his enemies at the same time, making Michael the godfather of the mafia. This is a newer choice in the movie. Executions of Barzini and Tattaglia do happen in parallel in the book, but the baptism and the execution of Mo Green, Strachey and others are done at different times. Making everything simultaneous is a perfect choice, executing the perfect symbolism of the scene, while also creating a great alibi. Not to mention that it's much more cinematic this way. Michael says the words of affection to Christ,
I do renounce them.
but his soul and morality reach lowest point yet. Coppola also chooses to leave to most personal killings outside of the fast-paced collage. Tessios and Carlos' killings are more revealing of Michael's psychology, and we spend more time with them. So why is it probably the best climactic sequence of all time? It has perfect drama, a perfect score, lot of anticipation of paralleled actions, quality action beats, a dramatic irony, and perfect symbolism. It's a combination that our minds just cannot refuse to appreciate. The Godfather Part 2. With that said, we better transition to The Godfather Part 2, and once again, in order to understand climactic sequence, we need to examine the movie before that. Godfather Part 2 is largely a movie about Michael's increasing paranoia. Lot of it is justified indeed. Corleone family takes the biggest hit in its lifetime, an assassination attempt at their own home.
In my home! In my bedroom where my wife sleeps!
That looks very much like an inside job. Mike has alienated himself from the family, and he does not have any true friends, only subordinates, some of which are not trustworthy. But Michael manages to remedy a lot of the external problems throughout the movie. Hyman Ross is extradited to American prison, on the brink of death due to his diminishing health. Frank Pentangeli is also in prison after he refused to cooperate with authorities against Corleone family. Johnny Ola's dead. Fredo returns home after repenting his sins, and is basically relegated to the role of a decorated babysitter. Even Connie, known troublemaker of the family, returns home and stands by Michael's side, finally pledging herself to his will. Kay leaves, a hurtful moment for sure, but ultimately any challenge from her side is also eliminated. Mike actually does not need to do anything.
I mean, you've won. You want to wipe everybody out?
There is no need for any of the climactic sequences, really. They do not accomplish anything apart from treating Michael's own ego and increasing paranoia. That's why it feels totally different. Instead of the uplifting score in the original's climactic crosscut, we get one of the most tuned down music of the movie. It is the same score that was used for anticipating the dangers in the original, not for resolving them. Order of the events also contribute to this feeling of a downer tone. Do you remember what was the source of the biggest chills in the original? The anticipation of the unknown. We as an audience expected some moves, sure, but we were kept in the dark on the actual actions taken by Michael. In part 2, we know everything up front. Ross is going to be met at the airport.
That plane goes to Miami.
Right. That's where I want it met.
Frankie Pentangeli's suicide is pretty openly negotiated with him by Tom Hagen.
What do I do now?
Want to plot against the Emperor failed. Plotters were always given a chance. Let the families keep their fortunes.
Opened up their veins.
Don't worry about anything, Frankie 5/8.
And even though we might still have hopes that Michael truly forgave Fredo and would forgo the revenge, we have also been prepared for the inevitable end. Instead of the energizing entrance in the climactic sequence, Part 2's crosscut is a meaningless resolution of largely unnecessary climax. No family interest or survival is at stake, only Michael's soul. We do not get any gratification after the murders. Neither us nor Michael. If anything, we feel empty. The true emotions are invoked only afterwards, when you give it a thought, usually long after the movie is over. Once again, this applies to us and Michael alike. The Godfather Part 3. Climactic sequence of The Godfather Part 3 somehow manages to be distinctive from both of its predecessors. And on paper, this seems to be the most exciting. It's also the longest by a large margin. Crosscut events continue for whopping 15 minutes, in comparison to first two movies 5 and 3 minutes accordingly. In the first two movies' climactic sequences, the power moves are only made by Corleone family. So while we anticipate the results, the worst that can happen is to botch the assassination attempts. The family itself is not in the immediate danger. Part 3 is different. The Corleone family is not the only one pulling strings. They also are the targets, and the crosscut contains fragments from both of the sections. 4 moves by Corleones, 2 moves by their enemies. We are truly unsure on what the outcome might be. The third movie probably has the busiest plot from Mafia perspective, and it also shows on the climax. Part 3's climax takes a lot of inspiration from the original's crosscut. The staging of the crosscut sequence around the opera is clearly a homage to the original's baptism. Both of these events are the source of the music for the entire sequences. So why is the sequence lacking a little bit? At least in comparison to the first one. First of all, the stakes still feel less than in the original. As far as we know, in Part 3 Michael is the target of the assassination, but we are unsure if he wants to carry on at all. He seems to be at peace with the notion of death. If Michael dies, we as an audience can accept that. Assassinations of the Archbishop and Don Lucchese also do not seem that personal. The action around them also are admittedly not the most realistic in the franchise. These two moves are made by the new head of the Corleone family, but Vincent's journey never felt as personal as Michael's in the original. Lucchese and Archbishop themselves are worthy adversaries, but we are not outraged by them yet. They have not killed Sonny or Apollonia or almost killed Vito. We do want them gone, but not as badly as we wanted to see Barzini or Tatalia dead. Of course, in the end it's Mary who dies, and it's much more damaging for Michael. His emotional exhale at the realization that his way of life has caused the death of his daughter is a definitive moment of Al Pacino's portrayal of Michael Corleone for many people. You can see the emotion and the devastation. I cared for Mary for the sake of Michael, but not really for herself. She just never truly connected to me as an audience member. Sofia Coppola's mediocre performance also did not help in that department. With some minor criticism out of the way, I would like to focus on the best part of the climactic sequence. Rather surprisingly, one of the most emotional characters in Part 3 is Connie Corleone. She was largely relegated to an obstacle in the first two movies, something that her father or brothers needed to take care of. But in the third movie, Connie's role increases. She feels more important on the emotional level, one last standing pillar for Michael to lean on. She is the one who pushes for Vincent's ascent as a family member and ultimately as a mafia boss. And from the narrative perspective, her input also increases. Corleone family is at a vulnerable position. Michael is over the edge and disinterested, Vincent is a hothead and inexperienced. And in the moment of hardship, Connie takes the lead, acts as a stand-in for the Godfather, and manages to to rescue the family from the storm.
Don't ever again give that kind of order.
I gotta go ahead from Connie.
It's only fitting that in the climactic sequence, her input is the most emotional. She's the one who needs to personally take care of Don Altobello, a false friend, the type of adversary that was the most challenging for Corleone family throughout its existence. Connie does not fight for gaining power and influence, she is fighting for the survival of her family. All throughout the first two movies, Connie was an outsider, a person who could never fit in anywhere, and with her newly found place and peace, she is not going to let go. That's why we are so invested when Don Altobello eats a damn cake. Conclusion. So each of the climactic sequences perfectly fits their own stories and should be considered only in the context of the entire movies. The first one is clearly the most majestic, largely because it represents the biggest change. Michael ascends the mafia rankings in the movie's climax, and Coppola elevates this ascent even further by the perfectly fitting score, editing and cinematography. The second one stays with you the most. Status quo of the family in the crime world is largely unchanged, the only direction is that of Michael's soul, and it spins downwards. We have to settle for the internal consequences. Part 3 invokes the mixed feelings. It has lots of ups and downs, both for the emotions invoked and the quality of what you see on screen. But without a doubt, it was a fine attempt on the most ambitious ending of the most memorable trilogy of all time. If you would like to watch more analysis of films starring Al Pacino, click on the video on your screen. We'll get back to you with updates soon, fellow film enthusiasts.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.